What's up, people? In this video I'm going to be making a stone ring using this giant block of soapstone that I've had sitting around for probably around 4 years. During the quarantine I finally decided I wanted to do something with it, so here's what I'm doing. I first marked off a general outline using a ring that I already had so that I could follow these guidelines when I was cutting the stone. I was able to easily use a hacksaw to cut the stone because soapstone is very soft. If I was using something like granite, it would be a lot harder and I would probably need diamond cutting bits. But for something like soapstone, it's very easy and very convenient to work with. I cut off a rectangular slab and then split it into 2 pieces so that I could have 2 ring blanks to work with in case I made any mistakes. On the first blank, I used the ring again to mark a general circle so that I had a path to follow when I started carving the block. I used a ball sanding bit on the Dremel to first make a hole through the block so that I could then use a drum sander to get a more round shape. There were probably other ways to do this, like using a drill bit or any other number of methods, but this is what I went with, and it did the job in terms of getting a hole through the block, which is all I really needed to do. From there I moved on to a drum sander so that I could get flat surfaces on the inside of the ring and so that it would be a more round shape than what I could get with the ball sanding bit. I would test fit the ring every once in a while to see how it was looking. Since I'm making this ring for myself, I didn't need any kind of sizing guide. I could just slide it onto my finger and see if it fit. If it didn't, I would take a little more off until eventually it was close enough to just barely fitting over my knuckle but not quite there, so then I could move in with sandpaper and sand it to the final size. I wet sanded it just because it gets a smoother finish, and you can see here how glossy it already is, and it slides onto my finger perfectly. And so there you have it. That's how I made a ring. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Okay. So then I moved on to rounding off the edges of the block since it's a square and we need a round ring. I had the idea to first sand off the edges with a drum sander, and then I made this makeshift mandrel using another sanding bit and wrapped tape around it so that the ring would fit snugly on there, and then I could spin that in the Dremel to sand off the surfaces. Now in theory this idea worked really well. It even started out working really well too. I was able to put the bit in and everything was looking just fine and dandy, spinning perfectly. You can see that I even started sanding it, and I thought this was going to be a great idea. It was going really well, and even when I stopped sanding here, you can see that some of the surfaces were starting to get very smooth and all of the rough edges were starting to go away. You can see all the smoothed out corners, but unfortunately, as soon as I stopped recording, the ring shattered into a million pieces, and this is the singular piece that I could find off the ground. I think that the Dremel was just spinning at too high of a speed, and unfortunately that was the lowest speed that I could have on there, so that didn't work out too well. But this is where that second blank that I had comes in handy, so I basically repeated every step that I just mentioned, and this time I decided to go with hand sanding. And so instead of using power tools, I put in a little elbow grease and used a very coarse sandpaper to remove a lot of the excess material off the outer surfaces of the ring. You can see here I finally got it looking pretty circular and relatively smooth, but you can definitely see the difference between the inside surface, which was wet sanded, and the outside surface where I used really coarse sandpapers and it's very scratched. So what I started doing was using finer sandpapers to round off the edges of the ring and make it look a lot smoother so that when I dipped it in the water you could start to see the stones patterned underneath. But there are still a lot of scratches in there, so what I did is I continued wet sanding the entire ring up to 2500 grit sandpaper, which is incredibly fine, and what that did was it got a very polished, very smooth finish on the entire surface of the ring. At this point, it was looking incredibly smooth, the edges were all rounded, and I was really happy with how it was looking. Not only that, but it fit on my finger perfectly, and so I was ready to move on to what should be the final step. Now, once it was fitting on my finger, I wanted to put a finish on it so that the stone wouldn't get scratched. So I saw online that you can use superglue to seal a ring, and I decided to try it out. So what you're supposed to do is dab it onto a Q-tip and then run that over the surface of the ring to leave a thin layer of superglue over the surface. Now, this didn't really work out. It didn't look that good once it dried, so what I did is I went back and re-sanded the outside surfaces of the ring so that it was looking smooth again, and this got a better finish on the ring. There are still a couple imperfections because of the glue, but overall I was pretty happy with it, and you gotta take what you can get sometimes. So, with that done, that was the ring. You can see it looks really good, I think, and there's a lot of really cool patterns in the stone that you can see, along with cracks that have already been in the stone. And one of those actually I had to glue back together very early in the process of making the ring, but it's holding, and that crack now looks like a really cool feature in the ring. So with that, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!